Hello everyone, and welcome back to Dragalia Foundry, a fan channel where everything Dragalia Lost can be found. Today's video is the fourth entry in my State of the Game series, where I take a look back on everything that's been happening in Dragalia Lost, give my overall impressions, and talk about what I'm looking forward to seeing take place with the game. If you've seen some of the other videos in this series, you'll know that this is a bit of a break from the previous formats. In the past, I've mostly gone through bulleted lists and had a lot of pre-formulated thoughts for those videos, but today I want to try something a little bit different and actually spend some time with you here in the game itself. I do have a potpourri of topics as usual, so if you're looking forward to that part won't have changed. And here's what's on the agenda today. First up, I want to talk about both Kindness and Captivity and A Wish to the Winds, and just generally speak about the changes we've seen take place in Dragalia Lost over the past month. I'm recording this right around the 2-month mark after the game launched, so I think there's some great topics to discuss within those events and within the summoning showcases as well. After that, I want to talk about what I expect for the future. I've never really made a prediction video because the way the timing works out is one event ends and the next one's right around the corner, but I am going to be talking about some longer term predictions today, so that's the second part of my video. Finally, at the end, I'm going to talk about my collection, give you that peek behind the curtain that I did with respect to my Halidom in my previous video. So if you've been wondering what I have to work with, how I've leveled up my units, how I've distributed my resources, I'm going to talk more about my personal experience 2 months in and show you everything that I've been working with. So to start off, let me get into some of my impressions on A Wish to the Winds, and I'll also wrap into this my thoughts on Kindness and Captivity. So I have to say, I've really liked the past 2 events. And one of the big reasons is a restructuring in the rewards needed for those events. So in both of these, and we're looking here at the Divine Gale's reward list, but in both of these, the maximum rewards or maximum milestones you need to reach have been reduced. So in the previous facility event, Trick or Treasure, you needed 1,400,000 to reach the final milestone, and now you only need 1 million. And the same thing happened in the raid where we went from needing 6,000 gold emblems to only needing 3,000. On top of that, it's actually easier to achieve those milestones as well, because in this event, I didn't even have any gacha worm prints, and as the event progressed, I found myself getting around 13,000 gales per challenge battle just using the free worm prints that we get. Compare that to the previous facility event, and I was probably getting 9 or 10,000 with gacha worm prints to improve my rates. So I think that's definitely a positive change. Besides that, I'll say that it's nice that they added co-op for the extra boss battle that you get when you clear expert, but I am still a little bit sad to see that challenge battle is solo only. On the one hand, it is good to have solo content like this. It pushes you in a different direction than the raid, where unfortunately it can be a bit formulaic using those shapeshift prep worm prints. So I'm not going to harp on that too much because I don't really mind it, although I know a lot of you do like to play co-op as much as you can in this game. Maybe you have local friends or family members you play co-op with. In that case, I could see that being pretty disappointing. Other than that, I'll also add that the rewards here in this treasure trade were better, and also there were sinks for extra resources you got. So for instance, there are things you can spend your wind whistle grass on here, where in the previous event that wasn't possible with those snack lanterns. So I think that both of these events show us that the devs are really listening to feedback, and I honestly think both raids and facility events are in a very healthy place now. Hopefully we'll see some minor tweaks, like I said, maybe addressing the co-op when it comes to facility events, but I would be happy if these things stayed as they are. Moving on from there, I also want to talk about the Platinum Showcase. I made an infographic for those of you who want to summon on this, where I talked about your odds of getting a duplicate adventurer and how I think the dragon pull is the best value overall. In general, one of the big takeaways for this for me is now we see clearly that it's possible to have 2 showcases at the same time. I guess the other thing I would say is I don't think this is bad, even though this really isn't accessible to free-to-play players. If you're a low spender, this is actually really awesome because the first $8 you spend on this game, you can get a beginner pack, and that gives you 1,500 diamantium, which is enough to summon on this. So I think this is a great way to entice low spenders to put $10 toward the game, especially if they've been playing it a lot, and hopefully get a character they don't have or get a dragon. I also think because of those dragons, this is good for medium spenders and even whales as well. So I think this is actually a really good thing. It's a way to infuse some cash into the game, and I don't think it hurts free-to-play players just by it existing. I actually think this will hopefully incentivize some free-to-play players to spend a little money on the game. Personally, I decided not to because I like sticking to that free-to-play account. Maybe I'll make an alt where I spend some money on this, but I do think it's pretty good value. I know some people have referred to this affectionately as the scam gacha or scam showcase because in other side games properties, there are showcases like this where it's possible to get a duplicate. But let me just say this, it's already possible to get a duplicate on a normal showcase, so this is not really a scam. If you've whaled really hard and you have most of the adventurers, then it's not the intent of games like this for you to be able to collect everything in general. And it's probably not worth your money to spend even more just for adventurers or a small chance of getting them. So I just think, if you have reasonable expectations about this, it's a pretty good deal. Besides that, I also want to address another thing that happened over the past month, and that is we really got our first major look at what's ahead for Dragalia Lost over a longer period of time. And this is what I want to use to transition into my next topic, which is my predictions for the game. But if you look at this message from director Matsura, you see that we have a new raid event coming with new music, Resplendent Refrain, and their message is also that the worm prints for raid events that increase damage to the raid boss are getting removed, and they were ultimately limiting player creativity and player choice, not letting them use their gacha worm prints as much. So I actually think this is a very positive change, and I'm curious to see what strategies emerge as a result of that. I also hope that there's some type of mechanism in place where the default solution doesn't always involve shapeshift prep. So while I think the epithet will probably still involve a times clear, maybe they could vary the conditions to get that, and maybe the hardest challenge could be using a type of elemental team or doing something totally different to where just relying on that tried and true tactic of becoming a dragon wouldn't be enough to just get you the epithet by itself. Besides that, there were a ton of other changes announced. The AI was improved, we're getting more resources from a lot of aspects of the game, including login bonuses, our mines. We're eventually getting this part of the treasure trade where we can convert higher tier to lower tier resources. Bows and lances are getting a buff, which is huge. And there's going to be new content to bridge the difficulty gap between the Master Imperial Onslaught and Dragon Trials and the Advanced Dragon Trials like High Midgard Stormer. I think that is huge because for many people, High Midgard Stormer is still a ways off from what I can tell. Some of you have been able to beat it already, which is awesome. But as the game progresses, I think this is going to become much more accessible to players. For instance, as soon as we have a facility event that gives us a flame facility, right off the bat, this will be a lot easier. Besides that though, these new types of maps, like master maps for the avenues, are definitely a welcome sight. And last up, we're also getting Chapter 7 of the main story at the end of this year. So with respect to specific predictions, I have a little calendar here that we're going to take a look at that shows my predictions for the game right now. So you'll see Winds of Hope, that's the current Summon Showcase, and the Platinum Showcase, which lasts until the 29th and the 30th respectively, the end of those days. A Wish to the Winds, which ends Sunday, and everything past that I've put a question mark on because it's purely speculation on my part. We know that the next raid event is called Resplendent Refrain, and I've colored that yellow because I think that we're going to have light enemies in that event. I say that because we really haven't had a raid or facility event where we face off against light enemies yet, so that's just a prediction on my part. In terms of the picture displayed in the game, we saw a songstress, Lucreta, and behind her, kind of like a snow monster of some sort, which is probably the free dragon we'll get for this event. I do think Lucreta will be a shadow unit, and my prediction is she'll be a wand user. The reason I say that is, if you look at Celiera and Melsa, it seems like the devs are rounding out the weapon types free players have access to. So just the 5 units from the story gave us 5 out of the 8 weapon types in the game. We got the sword, the lance, the axe, the bow, and the staff. And then with Celiera, we got the blade, With Melsa, we got the dagger, so that's why I think we'll get the final weapon type again, the wand, with Lucrietta. As far as the Shadow Showcase, my expectation is this will not be a seasonal summoning showcase. This will be part of the normal summoning pool, which will go alongside Resplendent Refrain, and it'll be the first time we get a 5-star Shadow Adventurer who's on focus. So they'll join Nefaria as the only other 5-star Shadow Adventurer in the game. And roughly, I think Resplendent Refrain will last about as long as a normal raid, so until Sunday the 9th, and the Shadow Showcase will last a little bit longer than that until the 12th, since the showcases usually do last a few days longer than the events they're tied to. From there, my prediction is we will get that seasonal showcase that's tied to Christmas and the holiday season, winter holidays in general, as well as a Christmas-themed facility event. And I think that the facility events make a bit more sense for holidays than raids, because things like Christmas trees or snowmen, there's so many ideas for decorations in the Halidom that wouldn't get released otherwise. So that's why I think those make sense for holidays like we saw with the Halloween event. And if I had to make a prediction, I would say that we'll probably get a flame facility that will make taking on High Midgard Stormer a lot easier. And I'm imagining something like a hearth, like a chimney with a fireplace, and maybe some trees decorating it as the facility, and then some small trees or snowmen that you can decorate your Halidom with. And as far as the showcase goes, I think this might be the first or one of the first multi-element showcases we get, since we've kind of rotated through every element. For the Christmas facility event, I think the 3 elements that most tie in to that holiday are probably light, flame, and wind, because yellow or gold, red, and green kind of fit that season. But we already have a wind facility and we already have a light facility, so that's why I kind of think that we'll get a flame facility as well. That would probably mean we would be fighting against wind enemies, but like I said, I think that showcase might be multi-element, and hopefully we'll get some alts of popular characters in the game. I expect that event to last until about the 23rd, and the showcase itself to last until the 27th. And then somewhere after that is when I think we'll get Chapter 7, so way toward the end of the year. Now, all of this is just speculation, of course. It could be completely different, but those are my predictions. And regarding Chapter 7, I'd also like to bring up this post from Reddit, which I found very interesting, and it's about a month old, but I haven't seen much discussion of this. So supposedly this was a screenshot found related to the game that talks about something called Kaleido Labyrinth. So I'll just go ahead and read this. It's a post by Karozalt. Kaleido Labyrinth is a period-limited event where the composition of the floor changes every time quest. You can create event weapons by winning material dedicated to event weapons. Dream medals are event medals dedicated to Kaleido Labyrinth. Earned with event quests, you can earn items with items by accumulating a certain number. Earn number will be reset 1 week after the end of the event. Kaleido material is an event item dedicated to Kaleido Labyrinth. You can earn with event quests, and you can exchange items with event limited shops. The number will be reset 1 week after the end of the event. Treasure time is unknown. So it looks like a pretty rough translation, but there was, I think, a data mine toward the beginning of the game that mentioned 3 types of events. Facility events, which we've seen, raid events, which we've also seen, and then finally, maze events, which we have not seen. So Labyrinth, maze, I would imagine that this is related to that, but I don't actually know if this might be a permanent type of content that we're getting, or something like the current events, facility events and raids that rotate in and out. But based on the name Kaleido, I have to imagine this is going to be one of the first big pieces of multi-element content that we get. And the fact that it says the composition of the floor changes every time, I wonder if this might be procedurally generated, or maybe a new map is available every week or every day. That would be really cool, because right now, most of the content that we grind out and repeat is fairly similar every time, with a little bit of variance just because of co-op and just because there's variance in player activity. It does seem like this could go either way to me, but if maze events were kind of in the same category in that data mine as facility and raid events, I wonder if this will be something we could also see around Christmas time or maybe in the new year. I could also see this being a permanent feature on event quests, kind of like how Imperial Onslaught gets unlocked after Chapter 6. Maybe this will come out with Chapter 7 and get unlocked permanently, and the rewards, like the bonuses, will reset weekly, similar to the Advanced Dragon Trials. But anyway, I think that's a pretty cool thing. I want to see more multi-element content in the game as we go forward. Now, it's also possible we'll get High Mercury around the time Chapter 7 launches, since we may be opening the Waterway in the same way that we opened the Windway at the end of Chapter 6. Maybe that will happen in Chapter 7, but we'll have to wait and see. Now, those are pretty much my predictions for the game. Besides that, I do think we'll continue to get quality of life adjustments, like what's been announced in the direction for the game. I'm really happy to see the devs are listening so much to player feedback, and I can imagine they've gotten a lot of messages about the issue with spinning gather wings. I will say that despite my complaints, I guess, about that, it has gotten better. It has gotten better since the half stamina ruins ended. I'm able to find matches in decent time, but still not as quickly as I would like, so I do hope that that's something that devs are considering, and I know they've seen a lot of feedback about it, so I won't add too much about that. I have confidence they'll be able to find a good solution. So for the last part of this video, I just want to talk about where I am 2 months into this game, show y'all some of my collection since I've kind of showed you my Halidom in my most recent video. So I'm going to flip through my different teams here. This is my mixed element team. I really like this because Halloween Elisand's skills interact off of one another, and Lily provides skill damage as her co-ability, and Eleanor provides skill haste. So with Plunder Pals, Halloween Elisand becomes a monster with her skills. Next up, I have my Win team. My Win team right now is equipped in terms of their worm prints for taking on the facility event. Since I'm recording this on Saturday to get ahead a little bit, that's still ongoing and I'm just about wrapped up on that. After that is my Flame team. And if you're wondering why Ezzelith isn't here, I'm actually trying to use all different adventurers on all 6 of these teams just to show you a variety of characters. Naveed has been great for me, best on something like Imperial Onslaughts where there's many enemies to take down and utilize his Slayer's strength, but still very good nonetheless. And he's actually my only character right now who I can get to survive High Midgard Stormer. After that, we have my Water team. And like before, Lily is missing here, so I've put Celiera on instead. Thaniel is a recent favorite. I haven't fully leveled him up, but I did summon him in my last summoning video, and I think he's super cool. I want to figure out how to use Gauge Inhibitor effectively. I don't have Rex, so right now I haven't developed a team strategy around that, but I like this team nonetheless. Now we come to my Light team, and Halloween Elisand is normally here instead of Hope. Hope is one I also summoned in my last video, but he is pretty nice because he can trigger the double buff ability on your Fawn and help keep Luca at full HP. Linus has also been surprisingly good for me and surprisingly tanky. Normally I would have Silk or Unicorn on Linus, but I try to spread out the dragons and even out the power level a little bit here. And last up we have my Shadow team, which might be the most relevant if the new raid does indeed feature light enemies. Cleo is absolutely amazing. I think she's a great healer. Orion is probably my favorite unit on this team though. I think his kit is very good. But I have Berserker in control because I want to take advantage of his Striker's skill and the Striker's strength on that worm print. So I intend to basically use him to defeat enemies with 4 strikes and then switch over potentially to someone else. But as for the rest of my collection, this has generally been my approach. I try to get everyone I can up to at least 21 mana circles. If you don't know why that is, it's because at 21 mana circles you can unlock a character's full story. So I have prioritized my higher rarity characters to an extent. They're all around 40 or even higher, but other than that I tend to stay in the 20s with a few in the 30s. And there are only 8 characters here at the bottom who I haven't seen their entire story yet, as far as my barracks goes. So unfortunately I just haven't had enough mana to get everyone up to that point, but I do intend to do so. For my weapons, I have every type of weapon unlocked, including 5-star elementals, but I haven't crafted any yet. What I wanted to do instead was craft a tier 2 5-star weapon of each weapon type. So no matter who I was using, I would have a pretty decent weapon to give them. The sword, I have a lot of duplicates of the tier 1 sword, and that's because that's the weapon I'm going for unbinding when it comes to High Midgard Stormer. And I also have a few 4-star elementals and 3-star weapons. For worm prints, I've ordered these by level. Luis's Hobbies is great for healers at level 100. Plunder Pals is my go-to the vast majority of the time. I love that extra skill damage on any character with 2 attacking skills, but Better Together has been pretty good as well at level 80. This just tends to provide more stats than my alternatives as well. And I've tried to level up most of my worm prints I've gotten from the gacha to their max level. The other thing is I already have all of these high dragon worm prints max unbound. So when I was thinking about it, if I had just focused on Midgard Stormer and high Midgard Stormer, I could have probably already gotten this upgraded to Glorious Tempest, but I just got really bored just doing that one form of IO. And same thing with the weapons. If I had just focused on changing this into an elemental weapon, I would probably be ready, but instead I made 8 of these other weapons like Crimson Shade and so on. Now for my dragons, I've ordered these by element, so I have 5 flame dragons, 5 shadow dragons at the bottom. By far the light element is the most saturated for me. I'm only missing Jeanne d'Arc, but my shadow is also really good. That's where I have my only gacha 5-star, and I've unbound Nidhogg once. I try to max level all of these that I can, except for these Great Worms because they're not super good, so I have them all at level 40. And I'm going for 100 on Pele eventually. I really want more wind and water dragons so I can switch out some of these 3-stars. And finally, I'll just show you in my Dragon's Roost the bond levels of all my dragons. That's another area where I think it's fair to say that I've gone pretty wide with how I've distributed my gifts. So far, I've maxed out bond with Nidhogg and Pele, and everyone else is at least at level 15, so I've seen their entire story, with some of them approaching 20 or above in Sylvia's case, since I'm trying to get her to level 30 next. But that's pretty much it, guys. I hope that you enjoyed this video. That's a look behind the curtain of who I have, how I've been working with them, and just in general, what my teams are like right now. In most cases, I do stick Yuden on here since even if you're playing co-op, Yuden's player XP ability, just by being somewhere on your team, will kick in. But thank you so much for watching this video. Definitely let me know what you think about my predictions for the game in the future. These are kind of short-term predictions. I'm not necessarily talking about year 2. So I'm curious about what you think, whether you disagree, whether you agree, as well as what you've thought about the past couple months of Dragalia Lost. In my previous video, 1 month later, I talked about interest dying off from the game a little bit, people switching over to other gacha games like Epic 7, or back into Fire Emblem Heroes, which had added Aether Raids. So I definitely want to know where you are at with Dragalia Lost now. Personally, I have really enjoyed sticking with it, and I'm so motivated by the fact that the devs listen to player feedback in this game. I'm really excited to see what the future holds for the game, as well as for my channel. So thank you once again everyone for watching, for supporting the channel in whatever way you can. I really appreciate you being here. Whether it's a Shadow Showcase or not, I'll see you later in the week as the new showcase drops this Friday for my review. And that will also launch a new giveaway. So I hope you're looking forward to that. Otherwise, take care everyone, have a great week, and I'll see you next time.